For 200 years, the sea kept its secrets better than any locked room on land. The legend of Captain Marcus Blackstone Thorne and his fabled hoard was just that, a legend. A ghost story told in Caribbean taverns about a pirate so cunning he buried his treasure where no man could dig and no ship could sail. Most dismissed it as myth. But then, this compass washed ashore. It was found by a fisherman near Nassau, tangled in seaweed after a hurricane. It wasn't a normal compass. Its housing was brass, and instead of a needle, it had a spinning disc of ivory engraved with constellations. When the disc aligned with certain stars, tiny pinpricks of light shone through, projecting a pattern that matched no known map. It came to me in a waterlogged box with a note. My grandfather said this was Blackstone's. Thinks it's worthless. You like worthless old things. It was the single most valuable, worthless thing I'd ever held. The hunt for Blackstone's hoard had begun. The compass was a nocturnal, a tool used to tell time at night by the stars. But Blackstone, a former Royal Navy astronomer turned pirate, had modified it. The ivory disc showed detailed star charts for the Lesser Antilles, circa 1715. It took me 3 weeks of clear Caribbean nights to align it correctly. On the night of the summer solstice, holding the compass steady under the constellation Scorpius, the dots of light projected a perfect miniature outline onto my chart paper. It was a specific cove on the northwest coast of Deadman's Cay, a small, uninhabited rock in the Bahamas. But pirates don't just hand you a map. The projection was fleeting, lasting only as long as Scorpius held that exact position. It was a timestamp, a location and a time. Deadman's Cay is a jagged tooth of limestone and scrub surrounded by razor-sharp coral. I anchored my cutter and went ashore in a dinghy. The northwestern cove was a crescent of black sand walled in by high cliffs. At its center, a freshwater spring trickled from the rock. This was unusual. Most small cays have no fresh water. Blackstone's journal, which I'd tracked down to a private collection in Bristol, mentioned this place. He called it the Cove of Whispers and wrote, "Here the sea drinks the sky's tears, and the rock speaks if you listen at the right hour." The right hour had to be that solstice alignment. I waited. As the sun reached its zenith on that solstice day, something extraordinary happened. The sunlight hit the spring water at the perfect angle, projecting a wobbly, magnified image onto the smooth rock face behind it. The image was shaky but unmistakable, a series of Roman numerals. Visa Catiate, I mamamandavary mind, Sorinthi. I scribbled them down before the sun moved. Using a simple alphanumeric cipher, where A equals 1, the numbers spelled ERAIUN. Nonsense. After days of frustration, I considered Blackstone's French heritage and his tendency for phonetic spelling. Luan aire, long air, longitude, and latitude. The numbers weren't letters, they were coordinates, not degrees, but old Spanish nautical leagues. 518 leagues south, 1.9 leagues west. But from where? I used my GPS to mark the exact center of the light projection on the rock face. That was ground zero. Using the spring rock as my starting point, I calculated 5.18 nautical miles south and 1.9 west. The coordinates pointed to a tiny sandbar with a single stunted palm tree. My first mate Finn, a tech wizard who was looking greener by the wave, sarcastically asked, "Great, a treasure map to a tree, do we dig it up?" I examined the tree. It wasn't old enough, but at its base, the sand was different, darker mixed with crushed coral, not natural. We started digging. 2 feet down, our shovels hit sandstone. Not a rock, but a 3-foot square slab, carved with symbols. It was an encoded tide table. At its center was a carving of a mermaid holding a key. The key's teeth were notches that matched specific high tide lines on the chart. Finn photographed it and ran an analysis. "Captain," he said, his seasickness forgotten, "this isn't just a tide table, it's a lock mechanism. The slab is a door, and the tide is the key." We had to wait for the right lunar phase, a spring tide, the extreme low that comes with the new moon. 3 days later, at dead low tide, a portion of the sandbar fell away, revealing a narrow, dark opening in a coral ridge. A cave mouth, only accessible when the water dropped 2 feet below its normal low. We had a 3-hour window. We waded in, flashlights cutting through the clear water. The cave tunnel sloped upward, becoming dry after 20 yards. The air was cool and smelled of salt and age. The tunnel opened into a cavern, and on the far wall, illuminated by a shaft of sunlight, was a massive iron door, rusted but intact. Set into the door was a complex lock with 9 sliding bolts, each marked with a phase of the moon. This was the lock from the sandstone slab. Using the mermaid key carving as our guide, we began setting the bolts to the positions indicated for a spring tide. It was a tense, careful process. As the 9th bolt slid home with a solid clack, the mechanism inside the door groaned. With a shriek of metal that hadn't moved in centuries, the iron door swung inward. The cavern beyond took my breath away. It glittered. My flashlight beam fell on chests. Rotted wood had spilled its contents onto the floor. Gold, Spanish doubloons by the 1,000, silver pieces of 8, jeweled chalices, gold crucifixes, uncut emeralds, and gold bars stamped with the seal of the Spanish Royal Mint. And in a separate, smaller chest, wrapped in oiled canvas, were Blackstone's personal effects. His captain's log, his spyglass, a jeweled dagger, and a portrait of a woman. But the centerpiece sat on a natural stone pedestal. The Blackstone Crown, a circlet of heavy gold, set with 7 massive black opals that seemed to hold swirling galaxies within them. We didn't touch a thing, we just documented it. The historical significance was staggering. This was one of the only untouched original pirate hoards ever found, perfectly preserved. The Bahamian government and UNESCO were notified. After a storm of legal paperwork, the treasure was carefully extracted by archaeologists. The total value of Blackstone's hoard was placed at over $90 million. My share was life-altering. But more than that, we had confirmed a legend. We proved that Marcus Blackstone wasn't a myth, but a brilliant man who used astronomy, hydrology, and engineering to hide his fortune in a puzzle that took centuries to solve. The crown and artifacts now tour the world's museums. People see the gold and the gems. I see a star chart projected on a cabin wall. I taste the fresh water in a salt spray cove. I feel the grind of a tide lock sliding open. The real treasure wasn't the gold. It was solving the puzzle Blackstone left for the ages, a final magnificent act of piracy against time itself. Thank you for watching this incredible journey unfold. If you love history, mystery, and adventure, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next expedition.